very interesting. From it's okay. It was like sort of re-edited and printed from the Rebbe in Tafshin Nun Aleph, which is towards the end of the years there. But it was written and said rather in Tafshin Yud Gimel, which is very early, 1953. And he says over here that in the you actually have it here. You can read it together if you want. In the Pesach Davar, in the opening remarks, it says on the bottom there, Hamaimer Asheni. This is the second Maimer the Rebbe said at this Farbrengen. Shenemar Bizvadus de Purim B'Shana Hahi, which was said at the Hizvadus of Purim at this particular year, 1953. Very quiet in Lubavitch around that time. It was a small group of people, 770. Didn't really take off yet. Shirimaso Haisa Kashura, he says the saying of this Maimer was seemingly connected, Kanira, seemingly connected with the events that were taking place at that time, Ad Lemapalaso Shel Hamoshel Medina Hahi, which was basically the fall of that country, like of Russia. What was going on in that time? Like Stalin was basically dying. Yeah. Shayatzorer Yisrael. So this Gemara was totally said in conjunction with the fall of Stalin in that country. They don't usually mention it by name, which was a very painful, torturous country for the Jews. Kafisha Avinu Bashato, and everyone understood that at that. No, I'm saying they don't mention it by name because it's they wouldn't even mention the name. Like the Rebbe would say Medina Hahi, they would say in that country. But he says, and how did they know that this Mara was connected to the downfall of the country? Because at the time that the Rebbe told the story, he told a famous story as an introduction to this Maimer. And basically, Al Derech Horos Kavod Kedushas Mor V'Chami Admor the Rebbe Rashab Nishmasu Eden Petukufas Hamapecha La'achrim Palasu Shel HaKesar. He told a story about the period of the uprising, the revolt, the revolution after the fall of the Kesar. So let me explain. Ooh, yeah. Hold on a second, we'll use it right now. Let's try it out.
Whoa.
So let me tell you this story. This is awesome. Thanks.
It's in the split of, what's her name?
I know, what is her name?
Exclusive, what's her name?
Who crushed her foot and lost her hand and
Good.
married.
Should help.
Oh. Yeah.
She
We sent
lost
to Helen for her.
Lost her hand.
In the 402 bus crash.
Wait.
I can't tell you the name of the
Anyway, so the story is told, and this story again was said. I didn't even realize this until right now. This story was told right before this mimer, so it's connected with like the power of the story is connected with the power of the mimer. You see how the story is quite powerful. So it's in the time of the Rebbe Rashab. There was a revolution in Russia. The the Bolshevik Revolution. So this is when they basically overthrew the Kesar. They overthrew the Tsar. Okay, and they made. Okay, makes perfect sense. So they made elections, right, for the first time in Russia ever. So the Hasidim, it says there's a concept that's like a proper Jew doesn't even know the Tzura Samatbeya. It says he doesn't even know what the coins of the country look like. They were so mufshat and completely removed from any like reality of politics. They were living in the Torah. It's like the good old days. So they didn't know from Bolsheviks, communists. They didn't know any of this stuff. But the Frierdiker Rebbe said we should vote in this election. So one of the Hasidim, he took basically like his gartel, like he was going to do like mamash a serious thing. The Rebbe told him to vote, So he goes walking up to the booth, and there's all these people there, and he says, he goes and puts his vote. It's like mamash an act of God as far as he's concerned. The Rebbe told him to do it, and when he gets back, there's a group of Russian people basically celebrating their latest accomplishment. They brought the vote into Russia. So they're all around there, and they're chanting, "Hoorah! Hoorah! Hoorah!" You heard this story before? So the Rebbe kept saying that like that in this like weird way. Hoorah! He's in the middle of telling this story, and the Hasidim like realized all of a sudden that the Rebbe was like wanting them to do something. So the whole 770 starts going hoorah, hoorah, like this, like for a while. Right before he said this mimer, apparently. And hoorah in Hebrew means he's evil.
Oh yeah.
And so what happened is that day, at that moment, basically, Stalin died.
Wow.
And it basically, the Hasidim were saying that without any here, take that one. It's already set up for you.
Oh.
Without any, doubt in any of the Hasidim's mind, like the Rebbe was mamish making that happen. Basically, I mean, they don't want to say things like, but basically, so there was some kind of a spiritual activity taking place there.
Agreed.
Yeah, it was a decree going on that the Rebbe was pulling off. So in any case, that story was said as a preparation for this mimer. I just realized this for the first time. I never paid attention to that. So this mimer, I guess, is all part of the this decree. It's a powerful thing to say it over again. I guess hopefully we'll take care of business on our end. Israel North here will take care of our enemies. Okay, so now we got a few more students here. So we'll start the mimer. Tafshin Yud Gimel, the good years there, early years. So he starts off by quoting the Megillah, Al Kain Karu Liyamim Ha'ela Purim Al Shem HaPur. So it says, therefore, as it's towards the end of the Megillah, it says, therefore these days are called Purim Al Shem HaPur, because of the name of the Pur. Pur is the lottery, and that's the whole Megillah is named lottery, because of the lottery that was like the miracle of the of the holiday. So he says, Al Pi Yedua, according to what's known, Sheshmo Shel Kol Davar Mora Al Inyano, that the name of a thing describes its inyan. What's it all about? As it says in Shara Yichud Ve'amun in the Tanya, Muvan Dezeh Shekaru Liyamim Ha'elu Purim. It's understood then that they called these days Purim Al Shem HaPur, because of the lottery. Hu lefisha Iker HaYom Tov de Purim Hu HaGoral. It must be therefore that it's because the main Yom Tov of Purim is because of this lottery. In other words, the thing wouldn't be called Purim unless it was all Purim, right? It's the name of a thing that tells you what its essence is, basically. So since what is the Purim? It's the lottery. It must be that's like the most significant part of the story, if the whole holiday and everything is named Purim. Pur Hu Agora, which represents the lottery. But Tzrich Lahavim, we have to understand. Goral, it means lottery in Hebrew. We have to understand, Kamom Shemadayek B'Torah Or Divrei Maschil Zeh, as the Alter Rebbe in Torah Or asks in a mimer which starts with the same name as ours. He says, L'chora, seemingly, Haylo Zeh Haya Ikar Hanes. Seemingly, this was not the main aspect of this was not the main miracle. Right? In other words, there is the Indian of Ikar Hanes of Purim. There's a part of the Megillah which we hold. Everyone sort of holds that this is the Ikar Hanes. When is that? Does anyone know? It's actually Al Pi Halacha. You're supposed to raise your voice at that point. Part of the not with the groggers. That's like when we say Haman, where the reader is supposed to raise his voice at a certain point because that's when the Nes starts.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone knows when that is in the Megillah?
It's probably the part where it talks about nighttime when.
That's right. Balayla hahu. Very good. Okay, nighttime. Balayla hahu nardash nasamelech. In that night, the king's sleep was disturbed.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's really when the miracle happened, and all of a sudden he took out the book of Chronicles and he decided to raise up Mordechai, and right then Haman was in there to try and kill Mordechai. That was what's called Ikar Hanes.
Mm-hmm.
And so according to some opinions which we don't follow, but at least in the Gemara it says that you can start the Megillah from there. You don't have to read from the beginning, because that's the Nes. Anyway, so the Purim, the lottery, how do you say lottery in Persian by the way? Pur? Yeah, there you go. So he says that the ending of Pur, which the whole name of the whole holiday is called Purim, seemingly because of its significance and centrality to the everything. It's but it's not the main miracle. Ulahosif, and to add, Da'agoro shel hipil Haman, that this lottery that Haman threw, lo rak shelo hayanes, not only was that not the miracle of the story, ela adraba haya chelik ma'gazeh, was that not part of the decree against us? He threw the lottery not as some kind of a miracle. He threw the lottery to destroy us. So it's far from that. That was the miracle that he threw the lottery, right? Why is the whole holiday called by the name of Haman's lottery? And that's clearly stated in the Megillah, Lashon HaMegillah, Hipil Pur Hu Agoral Umam La'avdam. It says, when the name of Pur is introduced, it says he threw the lottery, which is the Goral in Hebrew, to confound them and to destroy them. That's what the lottery is all about. Here, Israel, you guys, you can have a copy of the Mimer if you want. And this, that these days are called Purim because of the lottery. It definitely simply implies that this lottery is the main miracle of Purim. I mean, why are you going to call the whole thing Purim, right? Because you're like, you're championing, like we call Pesach. There's an offering called Pesach, or Pesach as Hashem jumped over the houses. Like the holiday describes the wondrous events that we want to remember. Why would we want to remember this thing where it was thrown to destroy us? But obviously, it's mashma that somehow it was the main miracle. So the whole miracle of Purim is called specifically on the name of this lottery. That seemingly it would have been possible to explain this according to what it says in the Gemara, which is what? In other words, we're looking now for an explanation. How in the world could we call it Purim? Which seemingly is a bad thing. The Gemara relates, we read it last night, a couple nights ago, that when the lottery fell in Adar, Samach Haman Simcha Gedola, Haman became very happy. Amar Nafali Pur B'Yerach Shemeis Bo Moshe. And what did he say? It fell for me the lottery, in the month that Moshe died. V'lo HaYodea, and Haman didn't know Shebeshiva Ba'Adar Meis Shebeshiva Adar Nolad. And what Haman didn't know is that the 7th of Adar he died, but also on the 7th of Adar he was born. Right? So there basically is something sort of good that happened from the lottery, is that it turned out that it was a bit of a miracle, that he thought it was going to be like it was an unlucky time for us, and it turned out that Moshe was born in this month, and therefore it was a lucky time for us. So that's a bit of a miracle. And according to this, it's possible to say that these days are called by the name Pur. It's basically because the whole thing fell into the month of Adar. That's the miracle. That he threw a lottery, it couldn't happen any time, but the miracle was that it came out in Adar. Which is basically the month that Moshe was born, the savior of the Jewish people. So that's maybe the Rabbi is suggesting from the Gemara. We could say maybe that's the great miracle. What is the whole idea of Purim? What's the idea behind it? Is that Haman intended for bad, and it turned out he picked a month which was Moshe's birthday and the salvation of the Jewish people. That's the biggest miracle. Turned around. He says, but no, this explanation really needs further to be looked into. Because the fact that the holiday is called Purim for the name of the lottery, mashma, implies that the connection of the miracle to the lottery is lo rak nafala pur b'chodesh Adar. It's not just that the Pur fell out in a certain month, in the month of Adar. Elegam le'inyan hapur atzma, but it implies that it's connected to the actual concept of a lottery itself. As we're calling it if the whole thing is called Purim, it means that the thing called Purim, the lottery, is somehow itself a miracle, right? It somehow itself defines the whole day, not just the result of the lottery or something having to do with Adar, so name it Adar. You know what I'm saying? If it's really just about the fact that it came out in Adar, it would not be sufficient reason to call it Purim. Purim implies something about the lottery itself is significant. The Adar, on the contrary, Ikar Neis, Hamitzad HaPur, Hu Agora. On the contrary, it wasn't because of the results of the lottery, so to speak. The main thing was just because of the lottery, right? That there was a lottery. That's the main miracle. We're calling it lottery. We're not calling it the month that Moshe was born. And that's what he's saying, that Goral hu inyan naila yoser. That when it comes to the lottery, that itself is already something extremely high and wondrous. That we're calling it a lottery to point out that thank God for the lottery. The lottery is the level that basically saved us. From this level called lottery, that's where the miracle was born out of. In other words, there's going to be like a divine space called the lottery. And we're going to say we're calling it Purim because specifically from that divine space came our salvation. And this that it happened to be that the lottery fell out in the month of Adar, when the Savior of the Jewish people was born, who kamo kol ha'inyanim shayu b'neis de Purim. They were like, that detail was like everything else that happened in the whole story of Purim. Shem totzah mi'ikar ha'inyan. It's just an outcome of the main thing, which is Purim al Shem HaPur, right? There was a lot of nice coincidences and significant little handy mishaps that took place in the story of Purim. And one of them being that Haman intended for it to be bad, and it turned out that something good happened that he didn't know. But how many things can you point out like that in the whole story of Purim? Every single thing in the story of Purim is like that. It could have been bad, it turned out good. Vashti was killed, it made room for Esther, etc., etc., etc. So he's saying none of those things are the you can't say therefore that Moshe being born was the significance of the whole holiday. That was just one of many handy coincidences, all of which came from the Indian of Purim, just a concept called lottery. And that's why we're going to call the whole holiday Purim, because it's the lottery we're celebrating. The miracle came from the lottery, whatever that means. It's a good question.
Is it a leap year that year or no?
Also a good question. I don't believe it was. Yeah.
So we're saying that every other miracle occurred as a result of timing
of the lottery, of the concept that the level of lottery, we're going to see in a second, that lottery is like a level of godliness. That is the place where we were being communicated from. In other words, where the miracle came from, the level of the lottery. And therefore everything was a result, all the resulting parts of the story were an outcome of that. And that's why we're calling it Purim, because we sort of accessed the lottery. Base. V'yuvan zeh. We can understand this, al pi hamavur b'Torah or. He keeps quoting Torah or because we still have about 6 weeks or less, 5 weeks before Purim. Torah or, there's a section called Megillas Esther. And it's like a wealth of information. It's one of the longer sections in the whole Alter Rebbe's Sefer there. Mimer after mimer after mimer after mimer after mimer on Purim and all the different psukim and everything. So it's like it's the treasure house of all Hasidic knowledge on Purim, and all the memorim that come after it are based on those memorim. So anyway, he's now quoting the second one. But he says that based on what it says in Torah or, the Purim v'Yom Kippurim shayachim zeh lazeh. They're connected one to the other. Right? The Purim and Yom Kippur are connected to each other. If you don't mind, let's have a look at this little footnote, because it's interesting, just the connection of Purim to Yom Kippur and like the Chiddush of the Alter Rebbe on that, right? Everyone's heard that, right? Purim and Yom Kippur, right? It's Yom Kippurim. Where's the origin of that word? So he says, look in the Tikkuni Zohar, footnote number 9 at the bottom. It says Purim is Kriyas Hashem Yom Kippurim, right? What does it say there? It says Purim is called. It was named for Yom Kippurim. The Purim got its name because Purim came later, right? It was named for Yom Kippurim. That's what it says in the Zohar. L'chora, seemingly, Peresh HaTikuni Zohar, Peresh HaTorah Or, he says seemingly the explanation of the Tikuni Zohar and that which the Alter Rebbe brings in Torah Or, Shaba'ara Haba, which is in the next footnote, Shekippurim hu kamo Purim, where the Alter Rebbe says that when it says Yom Kippurim, what does the word Kippurim means? It means a day like Purim. So Yom HaKippurim means a day like Purim, whereas one of the Tikuni Zohar says that Purim was named after Yom HaKippurim. So the Rebbe says, Hem Shnei Perushim Hafachim. They're two different, opposite things, if you think about it. Because the Zohar says that Yom Kippur is the main thing and Purim was named after it. And the Alter Rebbe says that Purim is the main thing and Yom Kippur, Kippurim, is a holiday which is named after Purim. It's a pretty significant switcheroo. It's based on the fact that Purim didn't exist yet, practically, by the time we got Yom Kippurim for the first time. And he says, the Perush HaTikuni Zohar, that when it comes in the explanation of the Tikuni Zohar, Purim Nikra al Shem Yom HaKippurim, that Purim was named after Yom Kippur, that comes out that Yom HaKippurim is Lamayla Purim. It comes out that Yom Kippur is above and higher spiritually than Purim. Because Purim was named after Yom HaKippurim. In other words, there was something called the Day of Atonement, and we grabbed a little Purim out of there, and it's a little bit leveled down. But according to the Perush of the Torah Or, according to the Alter Rebbe, Yom HaKippurim hu Kippurim, that Yom HaKippurim is merely like Purim, Kippur, then Purim is higher than Yom Kippur. So it's a very significant Kabbalistic, we're not talking about Nigla over here. This is the Tikuni Zohar that says this. The Alter Rebbe brings a new Perush thousands of years later, changing the situation that you thought that there was a connection between these two because Purim was kind of like Yom Kippur. It turns out on the other way around. That Yom Kippur is kind of almost as high as Purim. It's a very amazing thing to happen. Okay. Should we keep going? It's kind of an interesting little footnote there. What?
Had nothing to do with any kind of lottery, but
well, we'll see. We'll see about that. Vehine, should we keep reading this footnote or should we go back into the thing? Any ideas? Any suggestions? All right.
Footnote.
Nice. That's what I like to hear. A little enthusiasm. All right. So we can understand it. Ready? Hine v'tikuni zohar sham. So there in the Tikuni Zohar, Purim is kriyas al shem Yom HaKippurim. It says that Purim is called on the name Yom HaKippurim, Dasirin lis angabe l'shinoye le me'inoi. So we have to get the Zohar out of hot water here, right? You can't just it's not so simple to just change the meaning of the Zohar. So the Rebbe takes this on. He says if you look at the actual wording of the Zohar, when it says Purim is like Yom Kippur, which means Yom Kippur is higher, or it's called after the name Yom Kippur, he says Yom Kippur of the future, where we will be enjoying ourselves in it, and it will change from a day of torture, because it's called torture inoi, where we fast and so forth, to a day of pleasure. So he says Purim is like the day, it's called for Yom Kippur of the future, he says. According to this, the Rebbe says it's possible to say at least in a forced way. In other words, the Rebbe is trying to bring harmony back into the two explanations of the Alter Rebbe and the Zohar. He says it's a little bit forced, because the truth is that the Alter Rebbe brought a massive chiddush over here by saying that Purim is higher than Yom Kippur. But if you want to try and sort of make peace between these two positions, he says at least bedochek al kol panim, which means at least in a forced way we can say that this that it says in Torah Or that Yom Kippur is like Purim, right? The Alter Rebbe says that therefore Purim is higher. That's because the Alter Rebbe was talking about the Yom Kippur of today, right? Where it's a day of torture, so to speak. I mean, it's still Shabbaton. It's still all our sins are torn. It's a high thing, but it's not the Yom Kippur of the future. So when Alter Rebbe said that Purim's higher than Yom Kippur, what did he mean? He means higher than the Yom Kippur of today. And what it says in the Tikuni Zohar that Yom Kippur is above Purim, because it says that Purim was called on the name of Yom Kippurim. That's regarding Yom Kippur as it will be in the future. Dasidin li's anga, where we're going to in the future eat and drink on that day. He says, Aval la'abir lekaman. However, according to our explanation inside this mimer, in Sif Dalit, where he says that the Goral of Yom Kippur, so David, he's giving it away already in this footnote, that the lottery which took place on Yom Kippur, there was a lottery in Yom Kippur, Hu rak b'nogei l'shnei ha'seirim, that the lottery on Yom Kippur, which is basically, we're going to see inside the mimer that they both have a lottery, that's what's the connection between them, but the lottery on Yom Kippur was only in conjunction with the two, what is it called? Goats. You chose, they made a lottery, which goat was going to be sent off the cliff. That was a lottery. They did it by lottery. So the lottery of Yom Kippur, the aspect of the lottery was only in the goats. Whereas it was not full spread throughout the whole day. It was like it had like a limited measure of lottery. So he says, "V'kein la'abir shebetorah shalom ein chiluk l'chora ben Yom Kippurim achshav Yom Kippur la'asid lavo." So he says, however, the Rebbe said, I'm trying to sort of put the Tikkun Zohar back together with the Alter Rebbe. It's not so smooth, because as I'm going to elucidate in this mimer, the level of Purim is really higher in its essential nature than Yom Kippurim. It's not, and he says further here in the note that in a Sikha from the Rebbe Rashab, who also spoke about this issue based on the Alter Rebbe's explanation, that seemingly there's no difference between the Yom Kippur of now to the Yom Kippur of the future to come. And therefore, even the Yom Kippur of the future to come is just a day like Purim. In other words, Purim really, the Rebbe trying to save them just to make like a little peace between the Torah. We don't want to make wars if we don't have to. But ultimately the Rebbe says it's very forced, because really it seems like Purim is just simply higher than Yom Kippur. It's even higher than the Yom Kippur of the future. Okay? That's that. It's an interesting little piece of information.
Why is Purim lower than or higher than the Yom Kippur of the future?
Just because he says that what makes these two things great is they both have the aspect of the lottery, as we're going to see in a second, and the aspect of the lottery, which is in Purim, is more so. The whole thing is called Purim, whereas the Yom Kippur is just like Purim, because the lottery does not permeate it as much. It's just in the goats.
Okay.
And furthermore, there's an open statement from the Rebbe Rashab who says that the Yom Kippur of now and the Yom Kippur of the future are on the same level, and therefore Purim is higher than both of them. The Rebbe was just trying to find something, but he says it's a little forced because of what the Rebbe Rashab says.
Really the whole aiming of Yom Kippur, or not?
Excuse me?
Was that really the whole aiming of Yom Kippur?
Yeah, we're going to see. Anyway, let's go back into the mimer inside. It says it's understood from the mimer of Torah or that Purim and Yom Kippur are connected to each other. That's where we left off. So he says the pairs Yom Kippurim. That what does it mean? The word Yom Kippurim. Hu kamo Purim. It means it's a day like Purim. Yoni, you hanging out? You want a mimer? Oh, okay. Here, pass this down to Yoni. Okay. Both of them. I know. Okay, so he says the Perush Yom Kippurim Hu kamo Purim. That the word Yom Kippur means a day like Purim. V'yiser mizo, and what's more, shemizeh Yom Kippurim Hu Kippurim. This that Yom Kippurim is called like Purim. V'chaf adimyon bilvad, which has that chaf, which means just like, merely like, a comparison to. It's muchach. It's proven. Shepurim Hu naili yosem Yom Kippurim. So the Rebbe sort of clearly says that it's definitely higher than Yom Kippurim.
But that Purim didn't happen yet, so how could it be like something new?
Well, because the Torah is eternal, and therefore anything in the Torah is called truth. We learned this in a sikha the other night together, everybody here. The Torah, which is called Torah's emes is something which cannot change. You can't add to it, you can't subtract to it. So the fact that all of a sudden there's a new holiday or there's a new minhag or new halacha, God forbid, it doesn't mean that it's new. If it's new, it's not Torah, because Torah is eternal. It's always the same in all time, in all place, and it's like sort of, it doesn't have an ability to add or take away. It's something eternal. So therefore, since we live in a world of time, so we experience the eternal, so to speak, like piece by piece, because we don't have the eternal truth like upon us at any given time. We can't see future and past. But the truth is, just because we can't see it doesn't mean it's not existing eternally. And therefore, when you look in the Gemara, for example, of the Megillah, it's very interesting things. It says all kinds of statements. Haman mina Torah minayin. Right? How do we know from the Torah, if you look in the Chumash, where do you see the Haman existed? And they give a pasuk, Hamina Eitzazeh. The word Haman exists in the, this is what your friend was telling in the cafe the other night. The word Haman exists in the Chumash. Hamin ha'etz, from this tree, is the word Haman. And it says, Esther minat Torah minayin. Where is Esther written in the Torah? So they quote a verse, Bayomahu astir astir panai. On that day I will certainly hide my face. The word is astir, Esther. And it goes on, Mordechai minat Torah minayin. So they're looking in the Chumash already for where in the Chumash it's written Purim. In Purim didn't happen when the Chumash was given, because the Gemara says this, it's not Kabbalah, because it's clear and something factual and known that all these things existed already. They just didn't get revealed yet.
Where is that verse written? Her face will be hidden.
That's in the Chumash.
Yeah, but do you know what...
Which pasuk? The Eschanan maybe? I don't know exactly which parsha it is. It's not hard to find though. It's in Devarim. Mordechai also, he says, so it says, Kanim Basamim, Kani Bosem. It's a pasuk about the incense, which Kani Bosem means basically like fragrant, like cane, whatever.
Why Kaplan says it's the modern day cannabis.
Okay, it's hard to say, but anyway, it doesn't seem like it. But it's. So in the Aramaic translation of Kane Bosem, it says Maradachya. Maradachya means basically pure herbs, right? And it's Mordechai, right? So basically, it's in the Torah. That's the point I'm trying to make, is that, to your point, these things are all eternal. There are different levels of Elokus. The fact that the later levels, the higher levels even get revealed later, that shouldn't be so surprising to us. Since we're like living in a generation of Hasidus, do we think Hasidus didn't exist before? It was always there, it was just not known. Right. And so it comes out dafka later. The later the Torah is, sort of the higher level it's on. So going on...
It was like 1,000 years later, right?
Yeah. So going on, he says that, so clearly the Rebbe says inside, there's not even, he doesn't get into the whole back and forth, that Purim was higher from the mere fact that it's called Yom HaKippurim. It's a day merely like Purim, yes.
What would you have called Yom Kippur?
Say it again?
What would you have called Yom Kippur?
What would you have called
We
it?
say
Yom HaKippurim.
which is like Yom Kippur, but
Right.
you know Purim came a lot later.
No, what we're trying to say is that even though it came out in our reality later, Purim was always in existence. So even when Yom HaKippurim was like said in the Torah, it was already a name of a holiday based on Purim. Which, even though the physical story of Purim didn't happen yet, it had happened, so to speak, in the level of Purim and the story of Purim even had already had its place in Torah. It just didn't happen in our world yet. So when God gave us the holiday called Yom Kippurim, it was a page out of Purim, basically, that He gave us a little taste of Purim back in the time of the desert.
Alright, if Purim wouldn't be in existence, it would be called Yom Kippur or something.
No, I'm saying you can't say if Purim wouldn't be in existence. That's sort of what I was just saying. If Torah is eternal, that means it has to be. These are like, it's like the rules of nature. You say if gravity wouldn't be in existence, then no. Then you're talking about like a fairy tale. These are the rules.
Yeah, but this one we have is Ma'adim Malkum. We have the limitations.
But there's no concept that
based on a higher level, in a different world though. If we already got these rules.
I hate to tell you, the whole Torah is basically based on a higher level, right?
I know.
we're getting a communication from the Orient Sof over there. I mean, that's what it is. Purim's higher. That's for sure. That's what we're saying. It's just the Arab is trying to sort of save the Tikkun Zohar there.
Yeah, how do you fix the Zohar?
You don't have to fix the Zohar. In other words,
Well, how can you can't really discount it.
he's saying that one way you could theoretically say is that there's a Yom Kippur of the future that's higher than Purim. But even that is not really easy to say. And then again, you don't have to like disprove it. You're just saying that maybe you could say something simple as the Zohar was explaining for the first time, revealing for the first time that there's a connection between Yom HaKippurim and Purim, which it doesn't say that anywhere else. So he's saying, Purim, Yom Kippurim, everyone check this out. But he didn't really, maybe he wasn't trying to tell you you can't be too exacting from those words, because as it comes out later, the explanations of the Zohar is that it's the other way around. That really Yom HaKippurim was called on Purim. Maybe even for the Zohar it was a little bit too radical of a statement to say. But, okay.
Well, we will be eating, drinking in the future. So
We won't be?
we will be.
Yeah? Okay.
Maybe that's we'll take it to a higher level.
Okay, let's go weiter. So whatever it is, Purim's pretty darn high. Mashayich the Yom Kippurim uPurim he. So anyway, what's the connection between these two things? What do they have in common? Shebishneim hu inyan agora. So I sort of let the cat out of the bag there before, but they both have a lottery. People don't usually think about the lottery of Yom Kippur. Here he is. Shoot him. So Yom Kippurim he pilu goral al shnei hasiurim. What was the lottery of Yom Kippur? We already said they threw a lot on the fate of the two goats, right? In other words, one of them was offered as a sacrifice, and one of them went to Azazel. He was thrown off the mountain, and it was done by literally like choosing lots. V'gam Purim, hu al shema Pur hu agor. Of course, Purim is all about the lottery. The whole holiday is called the lottery based on this Gora. Ba'od inyan ba'shayches to Purim v'Yom Kippurim. Another connection between the two of them, because we're trying to say there, one is like the other. Shneim him l'mayla mishem Havaya. Is that both of them, according to Kabbalah and Chassidus, they're both above what's called the name Havaya, Yud Kei Vav Kei. They both have this thing where they're representative of a level beyond Yud Kei Vav Kei. Huh?
Asking for the essence.
That's getting right there. Hey, Benjamin, I have a copy for you if you want. So where do we see that they're above the name Yud Kei Vav Kei? To be Yom Kippurim Kasiv. So it's very clear in both cases. Yom Kippurim, it says Lifnei Havaya Titaru. It says in there, before Hashem you shall be purified. The simple meaning is, before Hashem, like you come before God and you become purified. But it actually says, before Havaya you will be purified, which means a level beyond and preceding Havaya. That's where the purification takes place. That's Yom Kippurim. L'mayla Havaya. V'gam enogei l'Purim you do, and as far as Purim is concerned, it's known. Again, also from Torah Or that Tam Shelo Nizkar Shem Havaya b'chol Megillas Esther. That the reason we do not mention the name Havaya in the whole Megillas Esther, Hu lefisha b'Purim hu gile orin sof shel l'mayla Havaya. It's because in Purim there's a level of orin sof which is above Havaya. So the whole 24 books of the Tanakh, every single one of them has Hashem's name in it, except the Megillas Esther. So you might think, some people want to say it's because it was in Galus, all the other books took place inside of Eretz Yisrael, and it's like a lower thing, we don't say Hallel on that day. So Chassidus, I'm saying most of the things that, probably many of you guys have heard this idea, of course, most of these things that we like just take for granted really come from Torah Or. It's crazy. All the Purim, like Yom Kippur, who's talking about that? These are like topics in Megillas Esther and Torah Or. Just like, for example, I don't want to sidetrack too much, but like in Elul, everyone talks about the king is in the field. It became like a Jewish thing. Elul comes, the king is in the field. It all comes from the Alter Rebbe. Like that's where came from. And also this, like Yom Kippurim is like Purim, etc. The other way around. It's all in there. So also this notion that the Shem Havaya does not exist in the right. It's basically brought out and thoroughly explained there. That this is an Inyan that it's beyond the name Havaya. So we see about Yom Kippurim and Purim, they both have this concept that they go above Yud Kei Vav Kei.
They like tap into the pleasure of Hashem.
To the Orein Sof, it says.
Even above that, huh? Pleasure.
We'll see. Ubir HaShayches, the explanation of this connection, the Shnei Inyanim, V'ashvad Yom Kippurim and Purim, the explanation of the connection of these two things that we just mentioned that are both equal in Yom Kippurim and Purim, which are again what? The lottery and above the name Havaya. Shebeshneim hu inyan hagorel v'shneim hu inyan l'mayla m'shem Havaya, that they both have those two qualities, the lottery and above the name Havaya. The connection between these two things is Yuvan behektim the inyan agora hu l'mayla ma'aseichel. So first we have to understand it's because by saying that the concept of a lottery means above intellect. That's what a lottery is, right? Simply like you put your intellect aside. You don't choose out of logic. You choose out of lottery. Chance. So the idea is that it's basically you're sort of circumventing the intellect when you try to rely on chance. Because if you're going to have a lottery, then it will always be when you have two equal things. There's no such thing as a lottery when one's just clearly better than the other one. In other words, at least a lottery as far as the true meaning of a lottery al pi Torah. It's not relevant to make a lottery when it's not an equal choice. Right? Because then you would rely on intellect. We're not talking about stam like making up games. We're talking about the lottery al pi Torah. When do you bring in the inyan of a goral? Right? When does the halachic concept of a lottery apply? When basically all is equal. And therefore there's no way to rely on the intellect. Therefore you leave it up to beyond intellect. You leave it up to, so to speak, chance. He says, for example, and we see this with the two goats of Yom Kippurim, Shahayu Shavim b'mara b'koma uvadami. The halachically speaking, it says in the Gemara, it says in the Rambam, in the halacha of Yom Kippurim, you have to take two rams that are completely equal in their appearance, in their shape, in their height, and their price. Because it's not called a kosher lottery if one is just clearly better than the other one.
Why do they even do that?
Why do they do what? The lottery?
In Yom Kippur. Why do they take two goats totally the same and pick one? Like, what's the deal with that?
Because basically what we're saying is that the level of lottery is a very high level of divinity, which we're going to say is above Yud Kei Vav Kei. So they want to employ this power of the lottery, specifically on the holiest day of the year. That's what we're saying, that's just Yom Kippurim, right? Whereas the Purim is called the lottery. It's like the ultimate level of this lottery. And just checking out this footnote here. So he says, when one of them is better, ein makam lagora. There's no place, again, officially, technically, halachically, there's no room for a gora. It doesn't mean someone can't come along and make a lottery out of whatever he wants to, but I'm saying that's not called a lottery al pi Torah. Al pi Torah, a lottery only falls into a situation when everything's equal. Because when there's room to choose with intellect, then of course you would choose with intellect. Only when the two things are equal, since by intellect it's impossible to choose or to veer to one or the other, it's impossible to know intellectually which one to choose. So then we rely on the lottery, which is above seichel. Here's the point, basically, that we're trying to say that both Yom Kippur and Purim, they both share two things. One is a lottery and one is being above the Shem Havaya. So we said to understand that, first let's look at what a lottery really is. We said it's above intellect. So he says, so too above. In other words, this is the spiritual component. The goral hu l'mayla mishtalshlus. That a goral above, we keep talking about the spiritual level of the lottery, it's called something above the hishtalshlus. Goral, lottery means higher than the hishtalshlus. Why? The chokhmah, he reishes hishtalshlus. Because what does the hishtalshlus begin with? Chokhmah. Reishis chokhmah. What is chokhmah? Intellect. Seichel. Right? So the whole orderly construct of the worlds is all based on seichel. That's how it's put together. The first sphera is like the intellectual mastermind, which basically puts the entire world into order. It creates the nature of the thing. So if you want to go above nature, above intellect, when it comes to like godliness, it means you're going beyond chokhmah. Same idea, above the ishtalshelus. V'goral shulamayla ma'chokhmah. Therefore, the lottery, which is by definition above intellect, chokhmah, is also by definition above the hishtalshelus.
That's a huge leap. of thing. Well, it's not random, but it's a higher source, a higher order.
Say it
And
again?
it could be like random. You say chance. He'll play the lotteries, right?
Yeah.
It's like something
It's a high thing.
high thing. not
Because
a
you're
chance.
basically going to a place beyond intellect. You're going beyond the ishtalshelus, right? So it is a high thing. It's a high level where, like, basically rules don't yet, apply. Because rules is that there's intellect. This is good. This is bad. We're choosing this. We're choosing that based on some kind of a system of logic. Yeah, you're going pasha beyond that. You're going into some place where all that, mishpat and judgment and really Torah in a certain sense has not been created yet.
So I guess we do believe in luck and chance, because I thought that's something.
Don't make any conclusions
Okay.
like that, because certainly we don't believe in anything
I know,
about
that's
hashgacha pratis, right?
I know that's.
But what we're saying is there is a level called. We're not denying the existence of the word chance. We're not just denying the concept of luck. Whether we believe in it or not, I don't know. Like we're going to see. But the idea of the existence of such a thing, that there is such a concept, let's say in people's minds at least, and there's a level called that, Like for example, we believe that there's a level called klippa, but we also say ein od milvado, right? Only thing there is God. So these are like bechinas of existence, levels. So we're not necessarily saying that there's a sort of essential truth to the concept of luck, but it is a thing. And basically, it's a thing which is above intellect. People rely on it, right? You throw the dice.
But there's no luck. It's all muscle, right?
Okay, so obviously that's we don't believe in stam luck. That God is controlling everything, but there is such a thing called luck, and people definitely rely on this thing called luck. And what it is that when it's beyond the intellect. Jews have a special view into what it is. That's what this mimer is about. But it looks like we're out of time. Let me just finish this. This line. So all he's saying is that al pizeh, according to this, the hashva de Purim v'Yom Kippurim. So what is equal about Yom Kippurim and Purim is that shneihem hu in Yinagoro. It's that both of them have the lottery, and what that really means is the gili orein sof shelamayla mishtalshus. That both of them have a revelation of orein sof that's above the ishtalshus. That's basically what it means. That's their connection, because they both go into this place which is beyond the name Hashem. Okay, I guess we'll just finish it tomorrow. Yeah, Purim's great. So can we I'm going to collect any of these copies if you're not going to hold them yourself, because we don't want to lose them.